What's up? I am John Mediana, and in this video I'm going to teach you all about Lightroom and how to start. So stay tuned. This is Lightroom for beginners. Let's go.
Your technique matters. Find your technique. Be you. I am ready. Let's do this. Welcome to my channel. I'm ready to go. Let's go.
I'm going to go ahead and dive into the Lightroom program. So it should be up right about now.
Here we are. So basically what Lightroom is and what it does in a nutshell is that it's a program that can manage and edit your images. The catch though is that it doesn't really edit your images or actually manage anything, but the program works by looking at your photos that you store on your computer or hard drive, and what it does is allow you to create instructions for how you want to change them. For example, if you have a photo that's a bit dark, so you want to make it brighter, Lightroom doesn't touch the original image. It doesn't move it or copy it or rename it or change it in any way. What it actually does is really cool. Lightroom is a non-destructive editing program that allows you to make changes to a version of the picture, which means that you can see what the final image will look like after you make the adjustments or make your dark image brighter or anything like that. So when you're finished with your editing, you can export it or save as a final image from Lightroom, leaving your original file completely untouched. I started Photoshop when I was 14 years old, and I'm 31 now, or turning 31. So I've been using Photoshop for a long time, and when Lightroom came on the scene, it made life so much easier. I use Lightroom to plow through hundreds of photos, editing photos real quick. Before we dive in, I want you to know that you definitely got to be using RAW as your source of taking photos. You want to use RAW because you have so much information that you can play with, and what that does is it absolutely allows more information in your photo so that you could pull highlights down and not lose any of that detail, or you could pull up photos and brighten them up and not lose any of that detail. RAW is the absolute #1 best way to be shooting your photos, photo formats. So that being said, you don't normally want to store your catalog on an external hard drive because it will not run optimally, or sometimes not even run at all. So you want to keep your catalog when we open up. I'll show you what your catalog is, but you want to keep it on your computer or main drive just in case, because it will slow your process down. So we don't want to do that. So let's go ahead and dive in to Lightroom. So when you open it up, you're going to see this page, and basically on this left hand side you're going to see this is your navigator, catalog, folders section. This is where you'll see your photos be imported, and up here in the top right, that's the important part to show you like where you import your library and how you develop them. I usually don't worry about these other tabs. They don't really matter. My two main focus tabs are right here, your library and your develop. So to import quickly, click this button right here, import. So we're gonna go ahead and click that, and you're gonna have this screen pop up. On this left side, this is where the source is of where you're going to be getting your images from. This is where your sources show up, and this is where you're going to be importing everything and all the information that it's going to be importing. So I went ahead and created a folder on my desktop called Lightroom Tutorial, and I have some images that I already picked out that are raw images, and I also put a JPEG in there just to show you the quality. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull these up, and these are photos that I've shot. I want to select all the photos, so go ahead and hit the import button. That'll take some time to load. As you can see, top left, it will show you all the status. So if you're importing photos, it will show you. If you're exporting, it shows you the exporting status up on your top left button. All right, so here we are. We have all the photos imported, and what you want to do is you're going to see thumbnails here, and you want to double click the ones that you want to choose, and to make it larger, to make it pop up. You could actually scroll to every photo by using the arrow keys. These two photos are the same photo, exact same photo, because I shot it in RAW and JPEG, and you can see the difference already. Here's your RAW, has a lot more information. This is like a 30 megabyte file, and this right here is like a 4 megabyte file. This is a JPEG, and you can see how much of a difference it has. So you could toggle and just start looking through your photos, see your selected photos. They're not that bad. I'm a firm believer on shooting in camera, making sure your settings are correct and everything's done in camera, and using tools and programs like Lightroom or Photoshop to enhance what's already there and really make things stick out, or use tools to enhance what's already art, right? So these are all selected. I'm gonna go ahead and go to the develop tab. So let's go ahead and click on that. I'm gonna start from top down. I love starting with a firm foundation. So if you're using presets, or if you know anything about presets, I usually start off with my presets to start off a photo. And if you don't know anything about presets, you don't even have to use presets. But I'm not even going to touch presets in this tutorial. I'll make another video about how to use presets and why you should be using it now. So just to show you the basics of Lightroom and the power of Lightroom, you can click on an image, then on your right hand, this right here on the right side of your screen, this is where all the magic happens. Right here is your histogram. It's going to show you from lights to darks, from blacks to whites, everything in there and all the colors in between. It's a histogram. You really don't need to know much about it other than like it's measuring your lights and darks. This tab right here, all this fun stuff I'm going to talk about later. This is for your crop tool and all your other stuff too, but I'm going to go through that later on. Right here, I want to talk about the basics. So your basic adjustments, this is why you should be shooting in RAW. This is exactly why you need to be in Lightroom, because when you use your basic tools, you could set your white balance. And if you don't know what white balance is, that's totally cool. These are your cool temperatures and these are your warm temperatures to make your photo look warm or cold. So if you don't know where to even start with white balance and making it look neutral, what you can do is click this eye drop thing right here, and you'll click on a neutral color on your backdrop, whether that's this white or a white wall or anything white, and it will balance your photo for you. I tend to go towards the warmer look, and I really like that. So usually if your tint is weird, like green or purple, magenta, you could filter that out and it will change the tint or tone of it. We don't want to mess with that right now because we were just worried about temperature, but your tone. So this is the really cool part. You can change your exposure, how you could bring your lights to dark, or you can boost it up and still not lose the detail in your photo. So right here, I'm not losing any detail. When you pull up a JPEG, you will. So if I pulled up this photo, this is a JPEG photo. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in. I'm gonna show you what I lose. So I'm here, and if you're pulling it up, you see that detail. You see all this grain right here. You're losing so much information and detail in your shot. It's crazy. All right, so let's go ahead and bring that back to normal. I'm gonna go to this raw image right here of the same photo. When you pull up the exposure, now you're not losing as much as you had lost in the JPEG. There's still information in there that you can see. Compared to the JPEG photo, you could see that you've already lost so much details, and you're just getting this infringing, this like red noise. It's just ugly. It's not usable at all. So what I can do, even with this, it looks a little blown out, right? So I'm gonna go down to highlights, bring down my highlights so you could bring back all that is blown out. I'm gonna bring down the whites because all my whites are blown out. So I want to bring all that stuff back. See that? It looks awesome already. I don't want to touch the shadows as much because no one likes a flat looking image, but the blacks I could bend a little bit. And so I would usually just play around with these tones, and with those adjustments already, this photo is looking amazing. If I went and switched to the JPEG photo that we shot of this, and we dropped this down, if I try to bring down the highlights and the whites, it wouldn't do as great a job as it did with the raw photo. I know this isn't a raw versus JPEG video, but when you're working in Lightroom, I'm telling you, you got to shoot in raw so that you can utilize the advantage of having more information in your photo. Contrast is, it's either making it high contrast, which is pulling your blacks down and bringing your brights up, your whites, and less contrast is neutralizing your photo, so making your values even. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave that at 0. We don't really need to pull that contrast. And the difference between clarity and contrast is that clarity is kind of like a haze. So it's gonna sharpen your midtones and de-sharpen your midtones. So it's gonna feel like it's hazy and like more smoky. And then when you bring clarity into your photo, it's going to really sharpen those details in those midtones. You really don't want to pull your clarity too hard when you're doing portrait photos because it's going to ruin your picture. If you want those details, you could keep it in there. And I usually dehaze it a little bit, and I'll boost up contrast to leverage the photo. But that's just like another tool. You don't need to worry about dehaze. I don't use that at all. But a really cool trick to make your photo look super dope is pulling down the saturation a tad and boosting up your vibrance. Vibrance and saturation are two different things. Saturation is your overall photo, pulling up all the saturation in your photo and desaturating your photo. What vibrance does is it pulls up the value of color in your midtones. So it will bring down the value of your color in your midtones, or it will raise the value of your color in your midtones. And vibrance is like a key tool that I use, especially for bringing up color and not pulling up saturation. And it's like, oh my gosh, you look like a Oompa Loompa. You don't want to look like that. You want to bring down your saturation a tad and bring up the value of your midtones, make your photo pop. That is one tip for making your photo look super dope. We'll go to tone and curves. This is your tone and curves adjustment. You could give it a basic S curve if you want to make it pop a little bit. And this is a S curve, your basic S curve, which is high contrast, low contrast. If you want a low contrast photos, which is pretty popular in the retro world, you want to bring up your blacks to make that matte look. That's the type of style you go for. And I don't mess with this one too much unless it's absolutely necessary. So you could go ahead and play around with it. But usually I like to keep things at 0 and toggle it with the in the basic settings. I don't really mess with tone curves too much. Your HSL, this is your hue, saturation, and luminance. I use this a ton, especially when I'm doing presets or anything like that. This is a very powerful tool. I don't mess with hue so much. You could change the hue. If anything's red, you could turn it into magenta. But this absolutely isolates colors that are in your photo, and you could manipulate your colors. So if there's anything red, you could either desaturate all the red objects in your photo or oversaturate and pull out those photos under your saturation. If it's orange, you could oversaturate your orange to make it look bright, or you could desaturate your orange. And they do this a lot, especially in the visual ambassadors community, which is really dope. Shout out to visual ambassadors. They do this a lot in street photography or urban photography. So that's your saturation for the photo. Luminance is super dope because you could actually brighten up those colors, targeting those specific colors and brightening it up specifically to those color fields, which is awesome because you get to isolate those colors and bring them up. So you see these blues, you could bring up those blues and make them pop, or you could turn them down and bring them low and give you a really unique style. I love messing with HSL and all that stuff because you get to have so much fun with colors. You don't have to worry about split toning. Detail is really cool because you have to understand you never could take a sharp, super sharp photo. Never happens. Even the most professional photographers shooting at with the most expensive lenses, with the most expensive camera bodies, they still sharpen their photos because it's all about detail. So what you want to do is boost up your sharpen mode. And what happens is with your masking tool, the masking tool shows you what is being masked and what is being sharpened. If you go all the way down, everything's being sharpened all at once. All the white is being sharpened. If you want it to be subtle sharpening, which I always encourage, you want to boost up your mask a little bit and just sharpen what is necessary. You don't want to over sharpen and make your image look like silly. Right, so I would do that, mess around with that, especially, and you could go down to noise reduction too. And if there's a lot of noise in your photo, you could pull up your noise reduction, and you got to be really careful with this tool because you don't want to overdo it to a point where you lose detail and all that stuff. So this actually blends your pixels together. That's what noise reduction does. And I don't really work with that too much, but you could go ahead and play with that. Lens corrections right here, just going down the list. This is really cool because Lightroom does a really great job of being notified what type of lens you use. And I'm using my Sigma 50mm art lens for this one. So it automatically senses what lens I use and adjust the profile correction accordingly. And what you could do is, a lot of people ask, how do you get those vignettes? You could just go in here and use the natural vignetting in your color and your lens correction. I would use it accordingly. Do not overdo. A lot of new photographers out there would overdo all the cool effects, and it just makes it look super amateur. So you want to do things very subtly. And that's like the whole point, is making things look subtle and not being over extreme about your photos. You don't have to worry about transform or effects or calibration. So definitely, if you're just starting, if you're just beginning Lightroom, I would focus on your basic tab, your HSL, and your details. Those three are super powerful. Another powerful tip or tool that I like to use is crop. So if I have a photo and sometimes I'm just on the go, I don't use a tripod most of the time because I'm shooting on foot. So if my photo is off or uncentered, I love using this powerful tool where you could crop. Cropping is one of the most underrated and powerful tools that is available out there. A lot of people think that photographers take photos like always perfect cropping, framing, all that stuff. That's not true. I've been doing photos for over 18 years and I still use my crop factor, and I don't take perfect photos all the time, even with all my experience. So my favorite tool is crop. When you crop your image, I usually like to shoot wider so that I could go in there and crop. I wouldn't shoot too wide, but I would shoot a little bit wider than I would normally shoot, so I could go in there and crop the way I want it, and I could angle it. If I want to create some sort of movement or make it feel like there's movement in this shot, I would angle it or give it that kilt angle. I would also use this cropping tool just to make it look, just to center it perfectly. And they have this grid on there that you could see where you can use your rule of thirds. You could put your subject right in the middle, or you could put your subject right on that rule of thirds, eyes right there. And then that would create a lot of interest in your photo. So that makes this photo more interesting than it would being dead center, which is, I mean, it's a great photo. That's my beautiful wife, by the way. She's amazing and gorgeous. So you could take this like plain looking, photo, which is like dead center, and you can actually, with the crop tool, give it a little bit more interest by using those rule of thirds. All right, so I'd bring that down, bring that to the eyes, and then crop that. It gives it more interest. But if you really want to focus on the subject, you can use that crop factor and make it perfect, and you can level it out. What I love about the crop tool is this little tool right here. it is a level tool where you could either auto click it being level, or you could use this tool to find a straight line. All right, let me see if I can find a better straight line here somewhere. So this photo is a little off because the lines are going from left to right, up to down. So what I would do with this angle tool is find me a straight line in the background, like that brick, and I would trace it. I would make a line, and this tool will automatically straighten your photo, and now it is angled perfectly. So check that out. I love this crop tool. And then all these other tools for basics, you really don't have to worry about. The next thing I would talk about is exporting your photo. What you want to do and how you want to export is select the photos that you want to export. I usually say select all. Whatever ones I've, I guess, like adjusted and played around with, I'm not going to select all. I'm going to select a few. I'm going to select the photos that I adjusted, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the File tab and click Export. And what this is, you want to make sure that you export your photos to the proper location. So you could choose the file where you want to export to, and I'll just go to the desktop. I'll say Lightroom tutorial, and I'll say export. I'll just create a new folder called export. I'm going to go ahead and choose that folder. Then I'm going to go down. You could change the file name if you want, if there's video, file settings. This is the important part right here. You want to look at file settings and make sure that you are using JPEG or TIFF, depending on what file you're trying to create. I keep my color space to sRGB. You really don't want to change that. If you're trying to keep your file size to a specific limit, which is like 3 megabytes, so that it compresses your file, so you don't have like 15 megabyte file or anything like that, which is crazy, or 100 megabyte file. You want to go ahead and limit your file size to that and keep your quality, make sure that your quality is still up there. So if you don't want to limit it to a size, you could boost your quality 100%, but I tend to just think that, hey, my file size at 3K is good enough. It's great for websites. It looks clean, and it's not going to take a lot of space. You could also crop or change your image sizing, and you can resize it to whatever pixels you want. You can sharpen for output. You could even put metadata in your photos. You could also export your watermark if you have a simple watermark. If you want to edit your watermark, I am not a fan of watermarking photos. I think it is amateur, and if people like your photo, they'll know who to go to for their photos, and your work will show. Other than that, all those settings should be good. I'm going to go ahead and click export, and on the top left tab, it's going to say how many files are exporting and how long it's going to take to export your file. And that should be basically it. Here you go. So if you go to Lightroom tutorials, I go to export, the 4 images exported, and they're under 2.3 megabytes each, and they've been exported with the presets and the adjustments that you've made.
I hope you learned a little bit on how to get started in Lightroom and all the fun stuff you can do. So hopefully this helped you out. So go ahead, and if you can do me a massive favor, hit the subscribe button. Also click that bell and keep those notifications on, so every time I post something, you will be notified. Again, if you want to follow me on my social media links like Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, all the links are in the description below. And if you haven't already, want to level up your Lightroom game, I have my presets in the links below, so go ahead and click on that link and check them out. We'll talk soon. Hands in, friends.